Hey everyone, it's Bob. Welcome back to the show. In this episode, I am thrilled to be joined by Dave Vu. He's the co-founder of Ribbon, that's Ribbon.ai, an AI-powered interview platform transforming how companies screen, engage, and derive insights from candidates. Dave brings more than 15 years of experience in talent acquisition, venture-backed startups, and AI innovation, and we dive into how AI can make hiring faster, smarter, fairer, and more human-centered. We explore high-volume hiring challenges across a variety of industries, how to elevate candidate experience, responsible innovation, bias mitigation, and what it really means to keep humans in the loop across the talent lifecycle. If you care about the future of work, ethical AI, and building more equitable hiring processes, this is a great conversation with plenty of insights on why AI interviewing is such a hot topic. Thanks so much for listening. Let's go chat with Dave. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. This is Bob Pulver, your host for Elevate Your AIQ, and today I am excited to talk to Mr. Dave Vu. How are you doing today, Dave?
I'm doing great, Bob. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to diving in, hearing about your background. You've done a lot of cool stuff and want to hear all about what you're building at Ribbon. So why don't we start with just giving a little bit about your background and what was the impetus for starting Ribbon?
Absolutely. I mean, my background has been in the talent space. I've been doing this about 15 years now in a variety of different capacities. So I started my career initially in an agency side. I worked in Toronto, in 2010 when tech wasn't as big as it is today in Toronto. And so I joined an agency where it was hyper focused on tech building, helping building early tech companies, their talent. And so I work with companies like Shopify and Wealthsimple. And obviously, looking back, those great Canadian companies grew much larger, but I learned a lot. I learned on how to recruit. I learned how to network. I built a great process, understood what recruiting and hiring felt like. It wasn't an area that I wanted to initially go into. My background was, after business school, was to be in sales, but it felt like an opportunity that something big was going to happen in Toronto. So it was very exciting to be able to see an industry grow here. And then, of course, being an agency is very different. And so I wanted to see what it was like to be a talent leader within an organization. And so I joined an early stage startup, and then I got exposed to the intricacies of what it was like to hire great talent internally, and how do you deal with budgets and how you deal with like the processes and hiring managers and things like that. Eventually, my career took me to the VC side here in Toronto. I was working at Class Capital, where they had a portfolio of companies that they would acquire and invest in, and I would go in along with the team to be able to find top talent at key roles as they brought those companies in their portfolio. That's when my career kind of shifted and changed. This was like the moment that really kickstarted everything for me. It was around 2018. So I got poached by another startup called Ezra. And Ezra, you might have heard recently, it was recently acquired by Function Health. They were working on AI radiology solutions really early on. And so I joined as a first employee there, and I helped them build and scale their team from just myself and two founders, all the way to them raising Series B and 50 employees, both in Toronto and New York. And that's where I met my co-founder. He joined as an early stage engineer and eventually grew to becoming head of machine learning. Him and I always stayed in touch, and we were hiring a lot together, and we saw a lot of the challenges, and this is where it brought us to what we're building today.
Awesome. So one of the things that I guess I appreciate about like the sort of path that you were on is, you sort of, as you learn more, you sort of internalize that and figure out what else, could I be doing? What else, should I be doing? What else am I interested in? And so I've certainly had a non-linear, path myself, and have had some, pivotal moments in my career where I decided to make some moves, including getting into podcasting, and before that, getting into the talent space myself, having a sort of transformation and an innovation background at large companies. So yeah, I think it's all part of, the learning process and career growth, and, discovering, what you really enjoy doing and where you can have an impact. So one of the things, of course, that I want to dig into is, what is Ribbon? What are you guys building? Who are your target, clients? How are you trying to now make this impact in the space and help people, do more effective and efficient, hiring, and how you think about that as you think about, giving more candidates opportunity, right? And trying to cut through, some of the noise and some of the nonsense that we've seen.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very interesting time that we're in right now, right? AI, I feel like it's just at that's the start of a really long journey. It might feel like there's a lot of AI happening, but that's the great time to be in when everybody's testing and trying different things. And now there's going to be AI applications that are built specifically for certain areas. And so we are the leader and we're in the space when it comes to AI interviews. So we build a two-way AI interview that helps teams screen candidates really fairly and consistently at scale. So the idea is to help recruiters be able to give them more capacity. The stat that I always look at that really changed my perception was, yeah, it started in 2018. If you look at the headcount of recruiters, their teams remain relatively the same. Like they're not growing at a really large clip, but you're seeing the number of hiring volume and applications explode in that same period of time, 7 to 10 times more than the number of recruiters. And so you're seeing this massive gap that's happening. And that gap causes a lot of problems, as you can tell, right? Because more people are applying, people aren't staying at companies as long as they should or as they would have in the past. And now there's just like a flood of great talent on the market. Recruiting team and hiring teams can't get to them fast enough. It causes a problem with their employee branding. The whole flow and process is all about speed. And so when we built this out, we were thinking about an AI solution that can do this 24/7, that can speed up that initial top of the funnel volume problem. And so our mission is really to hire within 24 hours. That's our long-term mission, is to be able to hire within 24 hours and make hiring faster and fairer. So the key is not only is it going to be about speed, but can we make this more consistent across the board and make it more fair as well?
So the types of jobs that you're hiring for is, I just want to dig into this a little bit because 24 hours is obviously everyone would love that, but I imagine that some more complicated or higher level jobs would take more time. But so are we talking about what we often think of as sort of high volume hiring kind of situation? These are, retail workers, blue collar or, hourly, workers, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we see a clear opportunity for us. And that's really where we're starting off. We know that over time, hiring is in AI is because it's going to be part of the hiring process, just like LinkedIn is part of, your recruiting process, right? And so the obvious place, as you mentioned, is high volume, high turnover, industries. So think of health tech, think of retail, think of the, manufacturing, the restaurant business. These are areas I think we can make a real quick impact on. Healthcare is another example as well. But we're also seeing, with that said, we're seeing like a lot of customers come to us with the same problem that might not be in that industry, but they're facing the same problem. They might have a team of 1 or 2 recruiters or a really small team, but they have a great brand and they're growing and they're facing the same issues. So I think over time, we're going to see this be adopted across multiple industries.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that makes sense. I think everyone is feeling the sort of weight of trying to deal with all of these applications. It's not that people don't want to be, human centric and empathetic and they don't want to give people chances, but there's only so many hours in the day. And so how do we, sort of augment our human capacity and still give people that fair chance? So I think, what you're doing is, sort of admirable in that way. And I also just think about all the people that would get overlooked, not because they weren't qualified, but because maybe they didn't, apply fast enough,
Yeah.
or maybe they just, made some little, equivalent of an administrative kind of, error in filling out an application or something that got them sort of automatically rejected, not necessarily based on their lack of merit or potential, just flaws in the system. The I guess one of the things that I thought was interesting that I don't often see so what I did see with Ribbon is you're actually giving candidates some feedback based on that AI interview, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest, I think, problems with the situation that we have in the space right now is like the ghosting or the automatic rejection or just feeling like nobody, gave you a shot. And even if a human being did in fact look at it, you're not getting any, typically don't get any, feedback on how to improve going forward. So you guys address that, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest things that we think about is, can we create a great candidate experience, right? Because if you create great experience on the candidate side, the companies will notice that because that's really top of mind for them. Like every candidate can become a customer for their companies. And so they're always thinking about, well, how do we create a great experience? In my opinion, great experience comes down to a couple things. One is, can we treat the candidates with great respect for their time? So that means that we should be able to allow them to screen, ask questions at any time that's convenient for them, right? And in this day and age, it's just, there's a lot of times where, you're not able to get to that interview. You don't want to step away from your job. And for seeing from our data, people are doing these interviews now, post 7 o'clock, right? Or 11 p.m. at night. You have two kids, you have a few kids and you're putting them down to bed and now you're free and you're focused on it. Or you might be like, okay, well, it's on my list. I want to get to it. I want to showcase who I am more than just on a resume. And it gives them another reason to be able to present their personality and communication. And the last one you mentioned is the feedback. So all these things combined creates a great experience. And we're doing all those things, but we're trying to amplify those more and more constantly is treat the candidate with great respect. And our customers will see that as well.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. In terms of the feedback from like your clients directly, I mean, are they seeing that candidate experience numbers? I imagine you're working with them. Maybe you anonymize, the data that they collect
Yeah.
on that. So in aggregate, you see the client feedback, but the clients themselves, I mean, are they seeing other, benefits? So is it improving the quality of hire? Have they tracked metrics to say, this is, are they looking at the specific, sort of improvement over what was happening before? Because I imagine the ROI comes pretty quick.
I mean, the main one that we're seeing that is the main metric that has improved the whole process is being cutting the screen time. So we're seeing cutting the screen time by at least 50%, and that's an average across like multiple industries. Obviously, we've seen higher numbers in other industries. It's just the speed alone has been really fast for the recruiting team because they get, once they put out that link, the candidate clicks onto it and they can screen with AI. You could wake up the next day and look at all the candidates that have come through the funnel and immediately not only look at the resume, but look at the video interview. You can look at transcript snippets. And now you have a kind of a complete picture to make that next decision. It doesn't mean that you're going to, I mean, some instances you could probably hire that person right off the bat, but you probably want to have a chat with that individual. But now you have a lot more clarity than just what's on a resume. A lot of times people don't write great resumes, right? Or it's too generic. It doesn't tell the whole story. The interview itself is a two-way conversation that allows to pull more specific info from the candidate. So as a client and a customer, you're seeing that impact right away, and that's very clear. On the candidate side, we take feedback from the candidates immediately after they do the interview. Every single one, we ask them for feedback, and we're seeing that number rise continuously. So on average, everybody that answers, we're seeing a 90% satisfaction rate. And most of the things that we're hearing feedback from them has been, wow, it's amazing. I get to go and showcase myself more than just a resume. I feel like it's not in a black box. I get feedback. It feels like somebody's actually listening. Even if they don't move to the next stage, they just feel much more complete, that they're able to like present themselves a little bit more. And also they love the accessibility. They love the fact that they can do this interview anytime at their convenience with the link that's available and also ask questions. Just like how you would interact with a recruiter, it's not like the legacy solution, video solutions in the past where there's a question, you answer it, and that's it, right? It's just a one-way. It feels very one-way. It feels like a news anchor. You're just reading out the information and that's it.
Well, obviously, I mean, I've had plenty of experiences where the recruiter might as well have been,
Right.
a robot, right? Because
Yeah.
it is just like thank you for that. Thank you for that. Like, thank you for that answer. Thank you for that answer. And you move on. And it's just like, okay, well, I'd be much better if this was a two-way conversation. To your point, Dave, it's like, I don't, I don't understand why people. I mean, we're all human beings, and you got to work with these people, right?
Yeah.
So why would you not want to just sort of dig in? And we know time is of the essence, and we've got
Looking for the inside scoop on payroll? Whether you're a payroll pro or just curious about your paycheck, we've got two podcasts you cannot miss. It's About Payroll delivers the latest trends for payroll pros, and It's About Your Paycheck is here for employees, breaking down pay and rights in simple terms. Two great shows, two great hosts, and endless insights to keep you informed and empowered. Subscribe now and elevate your payroll knowledge. Brought to you by Work Defined, where payroll meets people.
sort of time-based, efficiency objectives, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't think about, having a meaningful conversation and try to improve the effectiveness and the quality of the hiring funnel as well, right? And simultaneously.
Yeah, I mean, the magic is really, like you said, the two-way conversation. And I think the misconception is the AI can't do that. The technology is showing that it can. So as you start using our tool, you'll see that it is very empathetic. It asks great follow-up questions. It asks for validation on certain examples that the candidate provides. It asks for clarification. So it's a real conversation. And as the candidates are asking specifics about maybe the team, the manager, the culture, like little tiny things that typically happens in a conversation with a recruiter, well, you can load all of that information in and AI can answer that. So at least it gives some great confidence for the recruiter, for the candidate to be able to have some more clarity in terms of the role. And then from there, the next conversation will be with a recruiter, but you already have taken it from 0 to 50% or whatever, and you can dig in a little bit more versus having to just start from the beginning altogether.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine a lot of these candidates, they don't even have a resume necessarily, right? So they filled out an application that didn't necessarily require it. Hopefully the resume itself was a optional, upload or whatever. But yeah, I just think for a lot of what you're saying, like hiring in restaurants or, retail and manufacturing and things like that. I mean, it's just not, it hasn't been required, before, or maybe they just threw it together, but it certainly didn't look the same as like a knowledge worker or an executive's, official CV.
Yeah. And these guys are busy working with their hands. And so this is an opportunity to be able to interview after your shift. Your shift is done at midnight. Like you're not going to have a call with a recruiter and your applications might be thrown in and they might not be caught based on filtering keywords. But seeing somebody how they communicate, I think is very, very valuable.
Yeah. One of the other things I thought of as you were talking about just people being able to have that two-way dialogue and, share more about, who they are and why they'd be a good fit for the organization, right? You're looking for this win-win scenario. It was just reminded of a personal experience where someone got my resume. The hiring manager was interested, but they wanted me to do edits to the resume and make it sound more compelling, I guess, so that they could help sell me like further internally in the organization, because hiring manager wasn't the only person involved in the decision making. But I was like, you know what? No, I'm not doing that. I'm not going a step backwards. A resume is a marketing document to get you interested in talking to me. Now it's time to have that conversation. I'm not going to go backwards. I was like, give me whatever pre-hire assessment, technical assessment, behavioral assessment you want, or let me talk to a recruiter. But we have moved past that stage. And so, I don't know, part of it, I have to, I look at some of these things through like this talent acquisition lens. Now that I know enough about, how the sausage is made, I guess I get more critical and skeptical about an organization if they can't appreciate the fact that, now it's time to move past a two-dimensional document, no matter what fancy words and how I tweak, the bullet points on prior roles. Let's talk about what I can do for you. Let's talk about my potential to succeed in your organization and create value going forward, now that you're interested in what experiences I could bring to your organization. So it just seemed like we're complicating, some of this, and it puts, going back to your point about, this, improving the candidate experience and having respect for their time. It's like, I'm not playing this, I'm not playing this game. So that's just my opinion. I guess if some people are really, if they're that interested in that particular company and that job, and then maybe they'll, jump through some of those additional hoops. But I just saw it as not a good sign, and not like
Yeah.
thinking more strategically about how this really should work and how to find the right talent.
And it doesn't feel genuine, right? Because if, you're changing the resume and everything's based on a resume, then what's the point of even having that initial screening conversation? You might as well just like write up a 5-page resume based on the job description and just make sure that it fits into what that person's looking for.
Yeah.
That's a red flag for me.
Yeah. I mean, at one point I thought, is this recruiter, I was working with an executive recruiter. At one point I thought, is she trying to sell me like resume writing services? Because
Maybe.
that's, yeah, I was just like, yeah, okay. Anyway, so I think, we covered some of the challenges that I think people in these industries are experiencing. And so I guess I wanted to shift a little bit to just sort of broader, sort of ties to what I was talking about with that personal anecdote, but just more broadly, I know you guys think a lot about, that candidate experience and human centricity. So just curious, like sort of dig in more to this concept of human centricity and how you guys think about it, because this, as you can probably gather, leads into some of the work that I know you guys have already done down this sort of responsible AI path, and making sure that you're mitigating, bias and establishing trust and things like that. So I just thought we'd start to, unpack that.
Yeah. I mean, our main philosophy is really clear. It's human in the loop, really important. Like I've been doing this for a number of years. I just don't see a world where it's going to be just AI completely. Like I think just like in the nature of you buying a house or, visiting a doctor, like there's certain times where of course AI can enhance and make that better. So like human centric doesn't equate anti-automation, right? It means like you want to have the human in the loop to be able to, at the end, to be able to have the human aspect conversation. And I think that creates the experience. I think most of the time, these things is all about the experience and how does the candidate feel by the end of it. And there's some nuances that's there. And so for us, we want to make sure that the AI is doing all the repetitive work, making it consistent, making it less biased, being in a information gathering mission to be able to take the best information, make it transparent and clear. But the human at the end of the day is still going to make that decision, right? I whenever I do demos to companies, I always say, yeah, I walk through the demo and talk about all these things that you can customize with AI. But at the end of it, I always say that the recruiter and hiring manager is always in the driver's seat. And so you guys would always be able to, utilize it and then jump in at any point for the next stage of that conversation or interject yourself into the hiring flow. And so that's how we're thinking about it. So our design around it is really making sure it's a great experience for the candidate, but making it consistent, taking away all of the challenges that a recruiter will typically get bogged down from the manual work, so that they can make the best decisions and have the best conversations, have the best opportunity to build those relationships. And that's a human piece.
Yeah.
That's always going to be.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you guys are keeping up with some of the legislation in different geographies as well. I mean, we know, at least in the US, it's quite the patchwork of legislation, some recent pushes from the federal government to try to supersede some of that with what, I'm not sure. But are you operating, I think you're operating in other geographies beyond even North America, right? So
Yeah.
I imagine you're keeping up with what's going on in the EU and across Asia and other places, right?
I mean, when you're in a space where AI is really new and then things are evolving and changing all the time, you're seeing this right now, right? The federal government and in multiple jurisdictions are catching up and trying to figure out what does that mean. And so we're just keeping an eye out for what's happening there. To me, the similarity comes down to like the crypto industry, right? For a while there was a lot of like the uncertainty. And so it was hard for institutions to get in and be able to invest or like do things. And so similar here, regulations will help because regulations just create more certainty, less confusion for companies, especially as the companies are bigger and bigger. And not every company is innovative, that's going to be able to want to take something on like this all the time. But they want to have that certainty. Once they have that certainty, I think it's green light, in my opinion, after that in terms of like adoption. And I think we're not too far away. And we're already starting to see those companies starting to explore these things. Companies are also putting together an AI council that looks at these things holistically. And on AI council is going to be somebody from the technology side, somebody from the HR side, and somebody from the legal side. But I think there's more and more clarity. It's getting more clear. But we're always keeping an eye out for updates there on regulation. The one thing for us, we make it crystal clear that you're talking AI. Like I think the whole thing is to build trust. We don't want companies or ourselves to say, yeah, like it sounds like a human, but then we'll hide that it's a human. We make it crystal clear it's an AI. We just say, this is a really new innovative approach. It will save you a ton of time. These are the values that you get from talking to AI. Try it out at your convenience. It's 5 to 10 minutes or however long that screening call is going to be. And majority of the people have no issues with it. They click onto it and then they see that experience themselves. As long as we make it crystal clear and transparent, I think that's the key.
Yeah, I think one of the questions I was going to have for you was around the sort of acceptance of doing an interview through AI. And for me, like, being in the space as you are, but also, periodically, if I see some intriguing, opportunities, I may, throw my hat in the ring. So I do feel like I keep a pulse on, what it's like to be a job candidate these days as well. And it just seems like, which would you prefer? You may not think it's perfect. You may prefer a human, but if your options were to get ghosted and be one of 1,000 and not hear anything back and not get any feedback and just write this company off and talking to something that's going to take basically meticulous notes, ask, you know, some standard, but maybe some, thoughtful, questions as well and provide you feedback. I mean, what exactly is the downside to this? So I guess I'm curious if you've seen greater acceptance of that and I'm curious if that observation is part of any of the metrics that your clients are tracking in terms of, drop off rate. I submitted my application, if you don't want to, if you're making me spend even 5 more minutes filling out more information, then I'm done. It's like, okay, good luck. Right.
Yeah.
But we're talking about a job, like a source of income.
You have to put some work into it.
So what's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, worth to you? So yeah. So I'm just curious, like, if you've seen sort of the momentum shift to a greater acceptance of these kinds of interactions.
Absolutely. I mean, the story I always say is, this time last year, we've been building this for a couple of years now. We had a thesis around this, but we were early, right? And so every year, every day, we're seeing a shift happen, right? And that happens with new technology adoption. But this time last year, you hear companies say, "Yeah, absolutely not. We're not going to put this in front of our candidates. Candidates, we're not going to want to interview." Some candidates would also even give us feedback saying, "Yeah, I don't want to talk to AI. This is ridiculous." Like, all the usual stuff that you see from keyboard warrior online, right?
Yeah.
And then as people start using it and seeing how it worked, I think the misconception changes their perception. And so, it's not like Alexa. It's definitely the technology's gotten a lot better. The experience is great. And all those benefits that you say, I think are starting to trump that. And I think part of it is people's just general adoption when it comes to AI tools in general. I think this past year, people that I know are not that tech savvy using, ChatGPT on a regular basis. And so I think
Yeah.
AI starts to become part of our day-to-day workflow and activities. And so this helps us tremendously. And I think that's going to continue as people start seeing the benefits from it. I think partly too, like Hollywood doesn't help, right? Like how many times you see stories of AI and there's always going to be something negative. Like AI is going to, like I'm going to date myself here, but like, the T1000, Terminator 2, people always joke around. Like that's why you think about AI, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? Obviously we have to have guardrails, but there's a lot more benefit to humanity than I think downside. Of course, we have to keep an eye out for what can be negative, but that goes back to the regulations and things that I was talking about earlier
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of different types of AI. I mean, I typically describe it as a toolkit as opposed to
Yeah.
a tool or a singular, technology, because I mean,
Yep.
even, you and I have been around a while. I mean, even what we were just calling, automation, 8-10 years ago we didn't really think of it as AI unless it was really intelligent automation, but robotic process automation, rules-based stuff. I mean, some of that is being called AI now. So we're basically putting this under a very big sort of umbrella of of advanced technology and capabilities. But some of this has been around for a while, and so I guess one of the things about that is I'm curious about like how Ribbon sort of plays with some of the other capabilities, the other solutions, and talent acquisition tech stack. So just sort of practically and architecturally, how does it integrate with ATSs and CRMs and stuff like that?
I mean, I think AI is going to change the whole flow in general. Like what we've been accustomed to for 20 years, going into an ATS and ATS is just really a big repository of data, right? And so that's going to continue. That's going to change because it's really on the ATS, you're just what's input into it and it stores there, and then you have to go access it, and then you take action to it, and then really good data going in equals good action going out. But I think for us, we know that there's a transition period, and so we're working with all of the ATS that are out there. The top 50, we're integrated with the top 50 ATS that are out there, including Ashby, Workday, Bullhorn, you name it, right? And so we know that we're going to take the AI. AI is going to go out there, do the information gathering, do the initial screening for you, and then it'll be able to push all that information into your ATS system. And that's because you're still accustomed to that. But our solution can also be standalone as well, where you can go in and be able to see all that data and make decisions and look at the video interviews, the transcripts, all the insights, but I can't there on the spot. But we know that we can combine those two things to make sure your workflow is uniform or there's unity there. So yeah, we work with a bunch of ATS, and we have an API solution that can also be embedded into other platforms as well.
So you mentioned the video interview. So really, you could deploy it in multiple ways, right? You can have just a voice interaction. Yep. Like you mentioned, it's, someone's getting off their shift and, it's late at night or early morning, whatever, and they just want to have a 10, 15 minute, phone call. But you can do, if they're sitting down in front of a device, you can do a video interview as well. And so is that with an avatar, or is that just, one way, you're on video, but their AI does not have a physical manifestation, or how does that work?
Yeah. So essentially what the hiring manager and recruiter can do, it's up to them, is like certain jobs, they'll be able to toggle and say, this is just going to be a voice interview. And what that means is that you guys are both show up and just, the AI it will be the logo of the company that you embed for now. Eventually we'll have an avatar, but most of our customers said that's not even a major issue. The candidate is just listening to the AI, answering questions, and you'll hear their voice. In some instances, depending on the job, it could be like a client-facing job, a sales role, or just in general, the customer might say, I want to see how the candidate looks and interacts. And so they'll make that video interview. And what that means, again, the same thing, the individual, the companies, on the company side will be a logo of the company. Eventually it will be an avatar, and then the candidate will show up on video. So imagine you and I are having a conversation right now, and I go off camera, and instead of saying Davu, it'll be a logo of the company, and then you'll be the candidate.
I guess one of the things it's good to have those options depending on what the use case is and what the role is. I imagine that is a different.
Hi, I'm Stephen Rothberg.
And I'm Jeanette Leeds.
And together, we're the co-hosts of the High Volume Hiring Podcast.
Are you involved in hiring dozens or even hundreds of employees a year? If so, you know that the typical sourcing tools, tactics, and strategies, they just don't scale.
Yeah. Our bi-weekly podcast features news, tips, case studies, and interviews with the world's leading experts about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to high volume hiring.
Make sure to subscribe today.
Candidate experience is different, and therefore you might also have different sort of adoption curve in a way. Some people might be comfortable with having, the equivalent of a phone call, whereas others, I mean, I'm just thinking about the avatars. I mean, it can be sort of a double-edged thing, right? Like it could add value, but if it's not, realistic enough, or it's off-putting, or it's not responsive or whatever, then I suppose in theory it could backfire, right? People
Or
this is just too weird,
Yeah, I was gonna say, you hear all the time it could be creepy, which is what we want to avoid. The default might be better to have a logo instead of like an avatar that feels a little off, and so you're like, oh my god, this feels a little bit dystopian. But I think that technology is just gonna get better. You see that with Gen AI video tools, and then eventually that becomes a situation where you can actually clone the hiring manager or recruiter in the avatar itself if you really wanted to, right? Or you have a generic avatar that represents the initial screening, but it has to get to a point where it feels indistinguishable and very good, and so that it takes away that strangeness to the whole process.
And maintaining that transparency about that as well, right? Especially if it's basically you've taken the hiring manager and made a digital clone of them. That would be weird, right? You get hired and then you say, remember we were talking about this? And the hiring manager would be like, wait, what? So that could be awkward. But I think we're moving in this direction. This is, all of these technologies are going to get better, right? It's going to ask, better questions. It's going to be more engaging. It's going to be more, realistic. And so, I think to your point, you just got to, as you're advancing those things from a technological perspective, in order to maintain the human centricity and the trust, you've got to have that transparency. So agree. That's really important. How'd you come up with the name?
Yeah, so great story. So Ribbon, we thought Ribbon was more about achievements. And so, so like in a resume, everything is a achievement, something you've accomplished and you want to share it out. And so we thought Ribbon was a great way to showcase those achievements. And so Ribbon just felt really easy to remember, and so it stuck with us and we just kept using the word Ribbon.
Yeah, I like it. And it's good that it's like an actual word. It's easy to remember the website.
Easy to remember.
There's so many times I've tried to remember, did they drop this vowel? Did they have two B's instead of one? And so nice. So I was curious about just sort of more on the personal front, just like how you keep up with all of the AI developments, beyond talent acquisition. We would certainly understand if you spent the bulk of your time in that space as you're building a company and figuring out what's next. But just in general, like when you want to sort of take a step back, but still, pay attention to what's going on, in the consumer space and in our personal lives. Anything that you are particularly intrigued by or, playing around with or scared by?
Yeah, I try to keep up with there's so much to keep up now because there's always new tools that are coming up. But, I try to go online, read pretty regularly, and then talk to other founders. And as we go into like SF in New York and chat with other founders, we always see new cool tools that are coming up, and people share these insights with each other on different chat rooms and things like that. I would say one area that I'm very interested in, I just think it's so cool and it's super early, is on the Gen AI video side of things. I think there's just it's a world where, I'm a big movie fan. So I could see a world where you don't have to have this massive production like a Steven Spielberg style to create a great movie anymore. You go on YouTube and some of these fan created like trailers and videos look just as good as if it came out from Marvel or like one of those studios. So you can see that they're using it's probably an individual using Gen AI tool like out there to be able to create that. So I'm very excited about what can come out of that, because I think it changes, content. It changes the entertainment space. My concern really around that is more the deep fakes and how do we navigate that? Because you hear all the time about deep fakes and people taking your image onto another body or whatever the case may be, and so it can really manipulate what you're seeing online. And sometimes when I'm on Instagram and you'll see like these posts that are being created without the watermark that says Sora AI, it's almost like kind of like you can't tell if it's real, not real, maybe like, it's kind of unreal, but like you have some questions. And so that's the only thing that really scares me. And like, so then our perception of things and what we see will be harder to distinguish as the technology gets better and better.
Yeah, I agree. Already, it's pretty amazing what we're seeing. And so you're right. If people don't want to disclose that this was AI generated, then it's going to create and exacerbate some of the problems that we're already seeing in, across social media. So yeah, it's definitely a concern for me. I mean, I see what some kids who just haven't learned how to use AI properly and responsibly and ethically are already doing. I mean, as a girl dad, it concerns me.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're right. On a macro level, I mean, society is already on edge for many reasons. And so this is not helpful, but unfortunately we can't necessarily, we're always going to have these bad actors, right? And so, but how do we work through that? And then as far as like being able to do a Hollywood level, quality, production, I do think it's amazing. I am also concerned about some of the people who, that is their life and their livelihood and the disruption that causes to them. And it's not that I don't see that in knowledge work and in the space that we're in and across enterprises. It's more about really thinking more deeply about these creative crafts, the storytelling and the curiosity, the critical thinking, and some of the ways in which we tell sort of human stories. We just have to walk this fine line between what do we really want to let technology take off our plates and making sure that people can still get into these very, very human endeavors, I guess, in telling stories. So I just hope that storytelling in general, it remains largely a human pursuit.
I think so too. And I think, my hunch is that there might be a world where humans are going to seek out more genuine, it doesn't have to be high gloss, high production, but then they rather have those more genuine kind of like, podcasts where the conversation, it's like very honest. And so, like that's why podcasts had that massive explosion, right? You're having real dialogue and conversation like you and I are having right now versus, the Jimmy Fallon version where you're having this talk and, everything is like marketing and it's very, very super hyper polished. And so I think as humans, we're probably going to like now gravitate towards more of that side of things. And I hope that will be the case. I think there's going to be a world where both of those things can coexist and live, of course, but it's just a matter of like taste and preference and how do we navigate around it. And, it's still super early and the technology changes all the time. And it's really hard to make a prediction or a determination of like where we're going to go. There's a lot of benefits and there's obviously negatives. But I think as humans, when new technologies come into play, we need to sit down and figure out, what are the pitfalls? What can we maximize from it? But I agree with you. Like, I think like myself being a girl dad and I've got 2 young girls, I worry about what they're digesting and, does that affect their perception of the world or themselves, right? From a self-esteem perspective, what's being shown to them might not even be real. And of course, what's been going on in the world, you see, now like bad actors might be using this for political reasons as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting times to see what's happening. But what we're building on our side is definitely more positive. And so I think we're contributing to that side of things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the acceptance rate, the adoption of those kinds of solutions, even moving beyond, the high volume hiring, high turnover kinds of scenarios, I think this is really valuable. So, I mean, again, I've been in the workforce for 30 years now, which is just scary. But there's just a lot of people just trying to take, shortcuts, because how else are they going to get visible? I mean, there's just so many. It's going through this with the college application process as well, and that's with potentially thousands of spots to put these applicants, right? With talent acquisition, it's like, look, there's a lot of times there's one role, maybe not in high volume hiring where you're hiring a entire staff and different shifts, and there's more than one opening. But when we look at other corporate jobs, I mean, there's most of the time there's a job, right? And it's not like they're only getting 20, 30 candidates for a lot of these jobs. I mean, I can tell that they're getting hundreds, if not thousands, to the point where they have to take down the job post so that they don't get more applications and adjust the volume issue. But yeah, I mean, I just think that's why we all need this sort of responsible AI literacy, because we're just, I don't know, otherwise we're just sort of contributing to the problem and the sort of dysfunction in the space. But yeah, I mean, people doing what they need to do to to get income and support their families. And so I understand it on a certain level, but at the same time, it's like, how do we find more constructive solutions to break through that and maybe increase tenures that have been shrinking for a long time, and increase engagement and increase quality of hire, not just the efficiency of your funnel, right? Because then you're just sort of spinning the revolving door faster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So there's a lot to think about. So Dave, this has been great. I really appreciate your perspective. I appreciate what you guys are doing, giving all real human candidates an opportunity to showcase what they're capable of, and create these win-win scenarios between companies and candidates. So yeah, keep up the great work, and I hope we stay in touch so I can hear more about your progress and all the opportunities that you guys are helping your clients and job candidates realize. So thank you.
No, I appreciate you inviting me on, and had a great conversation. So look forward to continuing the conversation as this space evolves and changes, and maybe we'll do another update podcast on everything that we spoke about and see what has transpired over that period of time.
All right, Dave. Thank you again for coming. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.